Gear up, because this is the Fuel Your Marketing podcast, designed to accelerate sales and grow your business. Let's welcome your host, Arti Sharma.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fuel Your Marketing podcast. I'm your host Arti, and today we're diving into a topic that's very close to my heart, but often overlooked. But it is to make or break the moment of customer success, onboarding. If you think onboarding is just about getting customers, then you probably are in for a treat, because what you're going to discuss here is how do you use onboarding for massive growth. And as we all know, that the first 90 days determine whether a customer stays, expands, or churns. And nobody understands this better than today's guest that I have on with me, Donna Weber, author of Onboarding Matters and a thought leader in customer success. Donna, welcome to the show.
Oh, Archie, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure and a privilege to be here with you today.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you. So, Donna, for our listeners, please share a little bit more about who you are. Tell us something that's not on your LinkedIn.
Oh, well, let's see. Well, first of all, I help high growth companies who want to keep their customers to grow their business exponentially.
So let's start by setting the stage. We all know that the B2B landscape has changed. Customers have more options today, and loyalty is very hard to earn. So talk to me, in your experience, what's the biggest shift in customer onboarding today that you've experienced?
Well, in the world of B2B, there's a lot of hope. Companies hope that their customers deploy their products, and they hope that they use their products, and then they hope they grow and expand. I talk with a lot of companies whose whole growth strategy is land and expand, and then all they do is onboard, kind of deploy the product, give the customers a login, and then they're like, see you later, and then they hope that they expand. In the B2B tech space, people equate onboarding with implementation, and we could dive into that. The onboarding is the most important part of the customer journey, and as you said, it makes or breaks the long-term relationship.
What I'm hearing is that there's a lot of companies, and my experience also, personally speaking, and looking at a lot of GTM strategies that SaaS technology companies, cybersecurity companies, manufacturing B2B companies are deploying. They're just hunting for net new logos, and they're farming the existing accounts, but not for the long-term value. They're just looking for these accounts just as a get the new logo, and they're not farming them for the long run. From a customer standpoint, a buyer is expecting a quicker turnaround, quicker impact. Talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on why onboarding should not be an afterthought.
Okay, well, there's a couple things that you have there. I'm going to talk first about the B2C, the business to consumer experience, because over the last 10 years or so, there's been a huge consumer revolution. And consumers know that they have choices, that they can do all the research, they can look at reviews, and we know how important referrals and recommendations are, right? And then if they also know that the relationship matters. And so consumer products know how to sell the value. They're not just selling the feature and functions of a car. They're selling like a whole, vision of who you can be by driving this car, whether it's being safe in a Volvo or sporty in a Corvette, right? And they know their personas and who they're selling to. In the world of B2B, the products used to be the differentiator, but now creating technology is getting easier and faster, and with the advent of AI, even more so. So the technology, the products have become more commodities. And what sets companies apart are the relationships, the ongoing relationships. I continue to be surprised that the sales model has not changed. So sales reps are looking to close all these logos, the hockey stick at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, with little to no appreciation or incentives to sell to customers that stick around and buy more. And if you look at the numbers, which I do, when I work with companies, we look at the cost to acquire a customer. We look at the cost to onboard a customer. Often companies are spending more on that customer than what the customers are spending with them that first year. Let's just say the product the annual average selling price is $10,000,
Mhm.
and it costs $8,000 to acquire and $4,000 to onboard that customer. And if they churn in 6 to 8 months, even though you celebrated that logo, even though the sales teams are cheering, they hit the bell, they go off to their club, right? But the company has just lost money because it
Yeah.
takes maybe 14 months to break even. So if the customers are churning before then, it's a huge drain on the company, and you're losing all this compounding revenue when customers stick around.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen in these all these little, when wealth was available easily and quickly, and then profitable growth was just on the sides, and we were looking for growth at all costs mode, right? So most companies were there, and then they're now coming back to reality.
It's a big pivot.
Businesses were wired to be profitable, efficient, and sustainable, and now all of that is missing. So I guess a lot of people who knew how to build products were given this privilege to run organizations and build businesses. And I'm like 16 years in the business, and I'm like, where is the profit? I mean, this is the profitable, efficient growth is not new. It has been there around. For those of you who have been new to the party, welcome, right? So I think what I'm hearing is that companies often treat onboarding as either a checklist instead of customer growth strategy, or more, I think, and you and I were, I was reading somewhere about, you must have mentioned it also in your book, that onboarding is the first step to retention and expansion, not just activation, right? And I think that's very profound for me to say, yeah, what if we all start thinking like that? It is not just what you have today, but what could be the possibility of it is. And I think most growth oriented companies not just sell everything in one go. They're trying to build that relationship with the
Yeah.
larger. We talked about hunting for new logos is one thing, but again, farming existing accounts for long term revenue. But talk to me a little bit about the time to value. You're kind of referring to it and saying that people haven't been, organizations are not profitable and the customers are churning. So I think you also talk about time to value in your book. So most GTM leaders, as we all know, focus on customer acquisition. Onboarding is where the real magic happens. So why is reducing time to value so critical?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talked about the consumer revolution, and part of that is that people are more impatient. They don't want to sit around. So back in the perpetual license days, they might be spending a lot of money up front, and so they're willing to kind of wait. And now they're spending less money up front, and then don't want to wait all that time to obtain value from the product. And, one thing I've been thinking about, my book is called Onboarding Matters, but onboarding doesn't matter if you don't deliver value. So the whole reason your customers buy your product is to obtain meaningful value. And having a login does not deliver any value, right? Having technology integrated and implemented and data migrated does not provide any value unless they're achieving meaningful business outcomes. And so that value needs to be something that is meaningful to customers, that they can be celebrating that they've purchased your product and not dwelling in buyer's remorse and ruminating and going like, are we ever going to get any benefit from this thing? We spent 6 months researching, and we chose this product, and we're just sitting here in the dark wondering what's happening. I like to also say value needs to be not just for the buyer or the sponsor, but also for the users. So you might have, I've worked with companies where there's the executives, so they're one level of users. Another level are shop floor workers in a factory. And in order for those executives to see value, those shop floor workers need to see the benefit of using the product. They need to be onboarded and enabled as well, because otherwise they might be resistant. They might say, I prefer the way we used to do it, or I'm threatened by this new technology. I'm going to be out of a job. And if you don't get that user adoption, which needs to be part of that onboarding, then you're not going to have a license to renew.
Yeah, and I think that's where the churn really happens in SaaS, especially. Churn isn't a moment; it's a slow fade from day one, right? That's what.
I'm going to write that down. I love that. And, I've worked with several companies where they have these sophisticated products like financial tools, analytical tools, And there's so much they could do, customers could do with their products. And the customers revert to their legacy tool. Most of the time, it's a spreadsheet. So, there's so much, things you can do in real time. And they say, well, you know what? I've got my trusted spreadsheet. I've been using it for 5 or 10 or 20 years. I can create my pivot tables, like
Legacy
additional
platform.
formatting. Hmm?
Yeah. I said, or a legacy platform, because it necessarily doesn't have to be like a software doesn't have to be solving a spreadsheet issue, but any platform could have a fallback tool
Yeah.
in the organization, right?
So, in the onboarding, if you're not bridging that gap to ensure that the users are thriving in your solution, then you're at very high risk.
Yeah, you said it very rightly. Sponsors are buying the product. You got to involve the end users of the platform or the product. And I think that's such a big miss. I always, you said something interesting, which I kind of will come back to me, celebrating the customers, right? I think we're not in the process of, we're measuring the net promoter score, but what is the customer celebration index look like? And what are the metrics to drive that celebration of the customer, because that should be the adoption of the product. And I think that's something that user adoption is definitely measured in some great companies, but not just, sales done, check marked, net promoter score, okay. But what is the pool of that net promoter score? I think that's important to.
Yeah. I also like to look at, well, what's the meaningful initial values? We talked about value, but let's roll back to some first value. So is there maybe like your products deployed and there's some reports that can be, available in 2 weeks so they can see, wow, this is amazing. Or is there, it's a marketing tool and you can launch we're going to help you launch your first campaign. Or it's a job, a candidate tool. We're going to help you post your first job description. So I like to get to some meaningful value, some aha moments right away, even if it may take, months or years to get to that full return on investment. We need to make that, get the magic moment happening as soon as possible to spark some excitement, that celebration, make the internal customers teams look good. And also every time every time a person obtains value, they get some endorphin hits in their brain, which are feel good chemicals. And so even if the implementations are long and arduous and complicated, if you can get to some wins or some value very early on, then they're going to be excited to continue working with you rather than just being like, oh God, this is painful. I have no time.
Yeah, we call it within internally when we onboard our customers. We're an agency. We don't have a platform, but we're selling services. This is all the more reason why showing that tangible, quick wins. We call it quick wins to remarkable results, which leads to raving fans.
Oh, I love that.
So quick wins plus remarkable results leads to raving fans, and I think that's an equation, non-scientific approach of us kind of remembering and reminding ourselves internally comes from, and that's what I came up with. I'm like, what? How do we explain this and get the entire team aligned on why onboarding is such a critical element within our organization and our agency? Wow, good stuff. So, how can companies? We talked a little bit about how can companies do onboarding to unclock, the quick wins, but how about account expansion down the road? What do you think about that?
I've been talking with a company that provides a software product for automobile dealerships, and what the real opportunity with them is, yeah, they need to reduce churn. Okay, there's that. But if they could get customers to start expanding just 2 months earlier, it would be an additional $2 million a year. And this is, a small startup, an additional $2 million a year in revenue, and that's just in year one because that revenue keeps compounding. So, I like to talk about a value journey. So there's onboarding. You want to get to some initial value, but you don't want to stop there. So how are you going to provide a value journey to ensure that customers are going, deeper and broader in your product, or you're taking them on a journey to additional modules or products or solutions that you provide? A big mistake that companies make is like dumping everything on customers all at once. And all that does, remember, our customers are people. Like, it's not a company, it's not an account, it's people. And so you dump a bunch of little butts, not yet. And And so when you dump all this on people, what happens? It hit overwhelm. And, it's like a fuse that breaks, and then they don't absorb anything and no adoption occurs. So one of my taglines is transformation, not information.
Wow.
So you want to make sure things are landing. Again, there's that user adoption, user onboarding, help everyone answer the question, why are we doing this? What's in it for me? And then take them on a journey to get, let's say, to that first campaign. And maybe you start with a simple campaign, and then you can build up to a more complex campaign. And then you can maybe help them see these other tools that they can leverage to get insights from their campaign, so that they can really absorb and integrate and then they're going to be excited to expand. The faster we get to expansion, you said, you talked about earlier, the growth happens with your existing customers. And in a subscription business, the reason why companies and investors are so excited about subscription is when you keep your customers sticking around, then that revenue just compounds and compounds, and every year over year. So what we want is that initial value, a value journey, and then a long lifetime value.
Yeah, so I love the value journey framework or some sort of a concept. I want to share a very quick story. I was speaking with Sangram Vajra from GTM Partners, and we kind of got into a conversation. He was interviewing me for one of his upcoming releases, and we started talking about upselling. I said upsell, and he says, "How about upsell? We all change as GTM leaders to upserve."
Upserve, I love that.
Yeah. And he said, you know what? If we educate customers on features that drive stickiness, there's no reason why there will not be, and if we've done everything right at the onboarding stage and we met our user adoption milestones, the faster the customers use your product, the more likely they'll invest in other features. And I think companies with high expansion revenues have dedicated strategies which are, not just for the onboarding, but also within their upserving team to help the post sale part of it. And I
Yeah.
think while sales is closing the deals, onboarding is closing customers.
Yeah, it's opening the relationship. Yeah, I love the upserve, and I like to say when when you make that initial sale, there's that opportunity for 3 sales in 1, because you get the initial sale. If you're
Mhm.
selling to the right fit customer, then you'll get that expansion, and you'll also get a referral. You'll have that raving fan. So, if you do it right, and part of that means selling to your ideal customer profile, your ICP. And if you don't, then all you do is, you're buying churn. As my friend and colleague Greg Dane says, you're just buying churn.
Yeah, and I think in this economic environment, it's so important. And I want to kind of switch gears because while you are focused a lot on customers that have just bought from you, new customers and onboarding for those customers, I also want to talk a little bit about where can different departments play a role, especially marketing, keeping the customers, right? Because most of the times marketing is seen as an expense because they're only bringing net new. They're responsible for the top of the funnel growth. But I guess onboarding is where marketing can make or break retention in my mind. And I've seen that several times. We've run campaigns for our existing clients. We've sold just that as a service where retention seemed to be a little bit more of a bigger growth lever. So what role should marketing play in onboarding?
Well,
If
I have a 6-stage onboarding framework called orchestrated onboarding. And the reason why I call it orchestrated is because customer teams, all the customer facing teams, need to work together to serve the customer in harmony, like to provide a harmonious experience. So that means during the buyer journey, the first stage in my framework is called embark, and that's where the sales teams can help customers understand the journey ahead. So we don't just close. We have this proven workable method, right? And then marketing can help to promote that as a key differentiator, because as I said earlier, it's relationships that matter. And I believe they're going to matter more and more. So if you can help customers see you're not just trying to sell them something, but you have a proven workable method that is going to guarantee they're going to get value from your product, then that is going to set you apart. So I've worked with companies where we've named the onboarding program, we market it, we sell it, we charge for it, right? Then after, once you've sold to the customer, then the marketing team has a huge opportunity to help drive that value journey. So some companies have customer marketing teams where they're not trying to do that initial sale, but they're helping them to engage in the products that they purchased, and then helping them to see the potential of where they can go, seeing them, I think there's a huge opportunity, for example, for customer success managers to help those customers see around corners because, like, hey, we're with our tool, we're going to help you be successful, and we're going to help your customers be thriving, successful fans of your company. So then the marketing shift, maybe webinars, it may be workshops to help people gain the most value from what they purchased. It might be learning from other customers. I mean, whenever I talk to customers, they love learning what other companies are doing because they're like, what are other people doing with with the product? So having, maybe it's case studies, workshopping, peer groups. There's a lot of things marketing can do to really help build this community of raving fans.
I agree. I think community is such an underrated motion. And sometimes people think community means a big, huge community, but I think a community is where, few customers can come together, share best practices. And I think for marketing, while sales is bringing the net new revenue, I think your marketing should not stop at the sale. In fact, that's where I would say that customer marketing should start day one. You talked a little bit, the use of content, webinars, success stories.
Yeah.
Just get engaging.
Yeah. So, for example, maybe you've mapped out an onboarding process. People are working with them. Maybe it's high touch, maybe it's low touch, maybe it's a digital touch, but there can be a marketing campaign that's taking customers on a journey of where they should be. This one company I worked with, they had a journey where they were guiding the user to do specific things, and if those things weren't happening, then they get reminders. And then when that thing did happen, they could track the product usage, and then it branched, saying, "Congratulations, Donna, you've now connected your customer data. Now here's the next step." So you want to be guiding them along that journey, reinforcing what maybe onboarding teams or customer success teams are doing, or providing a kind of on-demand journey so that those people can be, really focusing on what's unique for each account versus what's the same.
So Donna, we've covered a whole lot of ground, right? In this era where technology is taking us at a speed of light or maybe faster than that, in this realm of AI automations and whatnot, where do you see onboarding is reshaping? Where do you see companies that you're working with adopting to these new era technologies?
So, when I started with onboarding, most people weren't talking about it. I like to say I literally wrote the book on customer onboarding. Since then, there's a whole software category now. So if you have a product that has complex, long onboarding and implementation, there are several companies. There's a whole category where you can leverage to really improve your onboarding experience and keep your customers more accountable. So there's a lot more tools out there. So that's one. And then in the world of AI, what I'm seeing, and I was just at a customer success meetup in San Francisco last night, and we were talking about this. So what I'm seeing in the world of AI, there's a lot of tools which are helping customer success and onboarding teams in the back end to really synthesize all the information. So maybe they're scraping gong calls. They're going through, maybe it's Salesforce or HubSpot. And so they're able to pull out some takeaways and key points. A big gap from the sales teams to the post-sales teams, like onboarding and customer success, is that they're often a lot of all that relationship collateral that gets acquired during a buyer journey, especially a long one, is lost. And then those customer-facing teams are like, "Hey, Arti, tell us why you purchased our product." And they're like, "Are you," it's like calling up the bank and telling them your social security number and birth date over and over, right? You want to pull your hair out. So the goal is to really help those customer-facing teams be, ready with everything they need, and to jump right into delivering value and not starting from square one with the customers. So what I'm seeing, there's a lot more kind of behind the scenes. What I'm from an onboarding perspective, I'm leveraging more digital, self-paced, on-demand kind of tools like in-product guidance. I think there's a huge opportunity there for a lot of technology. What I'm not seeing yet, and what I'd like to see is, let's say you log in and it understands immediately your persona and what your outcomes that you're driving for, and not just trying to give you a tour of the product, right? So there's an opportunity for it to anticipate what you need to do and take you to value very quickly, rather than like, even if I get a free mobile app, I still have to take time to figure it out. And if it takes longer than, probably a couple minutes, I'm out, right? So we need to really have ways to be proactively driving value to customers in the product. And I think AI, we can leverage that. I haven't seen that yet, but I have seen tools. There's a company that provides a way to get the handoff from the buyer journey to the customer journey, get those teams set up, and help companies see the trends around customer sentiment, risk, things like that.
Yeah, those are great. I think what I'm hearing, and I've also seen this happen, there's a lot of misalignment, right? And I think where AI could play a role in onboarding processes, alignment between different teams, not just a handoff stage, but also post handoff to also, a perfect example would be, and there are a lot of tools now available, listen to these conversations that are happening in the onboarding stage, the CSM stage, account management stage. And, when the customer is in the system, the ecosystem for, let's say, longer than 6 months, what are those conversations and where the patterns are, and what is the larger pool of customers telling you if you combine the entire feedback or the conversations to improve your product, right? So I think those are the kind of things that we're seeing more and more happen. But yeah, we're in this era where everything is changing so fast. Everyone's baking in AI. If you don't have an AI baked in, then that means you're definitely not in the game. I'm finding that that's one area. But what I also I'm hearing is that no matter where you are, regardless of the journey that you have, either be it the onboarding stage or the sales stage, integration, alignment, creating that value for the customer and experience for the customer so that they don't have to be like a broken record repeating themselves
Yeah.
to every new team that comes in touch with them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Stop wasting your customers' time.
and they know me better than your previous agent, real human agent, was able to, and that's when I will adopt those. So, well, what fun conversation, but we're not done. Okay. So Donna, before we wrap up, let's do a quick rapid fire round. I've never done this on the podcast, and this is a short and snappy answers that I'm expecting you'd give me. And so tell me exactly what's the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you the question, and let's see how we do. Question 1: biggest onboarding mistake companies make?
Focusing on the product versus focusing on the users.
Fantastic. One KPI every GTM leader should track for onboarding success.
Time to first value.
Best onboarding experience you've seen in B2B.
Personalized follow-up.
If you could fix one thing in every onboarding process, what would that be?
Rather than long monolithic deployments, breaking them down into phases and value-based.
Conversations. Awesome. Well, this was an incredible conversation. I truly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for carving out the time. I'm sure our listeners would really get some kick-ass advice here that you've given, and they're going to get to work and fix their onboarding process and see it differently. And before we go, where can people find your book, Onboarding Matters, and learn more about your work?
So my website is donnaweber.com, DonnaWeber.com. That's one B in Weber, like the grill. And then you can check out my book. I have it's on my website, but also anywhere where books are sold. Onboarding Matters.
Thank you so much, Donna. I can't wait for my copy. So if you enjoyed today's episode, for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe and share. And remember, great onboarding isn't a process. It's a growth strategy. Until next time, keep watching, keep crushing it. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for listening to the Fuel Your Marketing podcast. For more episodes, visit www.fuelyourmarketing.ca.